Welcome to Beyond Food and Wine, a Le Cordon Bleu podcast. In this podcast, we get some real insight into the food and hospitality industry from a variety of renowned chefs, industry experts, and Le Cordon Bleu alumni. Join us as we hear the fascinating stories and unique experiences behind some of the best-known names in the industry. Hello and welcome to Beyond Food and Wine podcast. I'm here with Jane Lovett, who is a Le Cordon Bleu alumna and cookbook author and many other things. Thank you very much, Jane, for joining us. How are you?
Well, I'm very well, thank you, Freya, and thank you very much for inviting me.
You're very welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you here at your alma mater. Well, although it's not the same building you would have attended. What's it like to be at Le Cordon Bleu London?
Well, it's fascinating because, as you say, it's a different building. In my day, it was in Marylebone Lane. I remember it being very, very small, and I haven't been back since, but I remember it as being very cramped and small.
Yes.
And so to come here to Bloomsbury Square, that's fantastic. Amazing kitchens.
Good. I'm glad that you're impressed with what we've done with the place. So just to start off with, I'd love to know, as a Le Cordon Bleu alumna, what drew you to come to Le Cordon Bleu London? And had you always wanted to work in hospitality?
Well, I don't think I'd ever particularly thought about working in hospitality, but I knew, I don't know how I knew, but I just always wanted to cook and work with food. And I knew that from when I was at school, probably from doing domestic science, as it was called then at school. And I never really wanted to do anything else at all. So it was a no-brainer for me to come to the Cordon Bleu for a year, which I loved. And I think my love of food literally just comes from greed. It's just pure greed. I love everything to do with food. I love thinking about it. I love shopping for it, planning what I'm going to cook, thinking about what the next meal's going to be. I've never understood people that say, I forgot to have lunch today. I just can't get that at all. Because for me, even if it's just a sandwich, which it mainly is, unless I'm testing recipes, but even if it's just a sandwich at 3:00, it's still lunch. And there's before lunch and after lunch. But I could certainly never forget. So I'm pretty obsessed by food, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, well, you're in good company because I'm definitely always thinking about what's happening next, what am I going to have? Not because, I'm hungry, but because it's just nice to think to kind of look forward to.
It is.
What your mouth is going to enjoy next.
Yeah, I quite agree.
So can you just summarise what your career has looked like since finishing at Le Cordon Bleu?
Yes. Well, I left the Cordon Bleu and I did a few temporary jobs in London, did a few temporary jobs sort of up in Scotland, cooking for sort of in lodges for quite a lot of people. In fact, I did that with my sort of partner at Cordon Bleu. We were all paired off into pairs, and I did those with the friend that I was paired off with. So we got some experience there, and then I came back to London, and my first sort of full-time job, proper job, if you like, was at Leith's Good Food, which was Leith's catering company in the city. And it was amazing. It was, I remember arriving my first day at 8:00 in the morning on a Monday, and the people, the staff there had been in over the weekend cooking stuff ready for Monday, and the head cook told me to roll up chocolate roulade for 100 people. Well, considering at the Cordon Bleu I'd only ever cooked for 4 people, and we measured a quarter of a gill of cream or something like that, as it was then. this just blew me away. But actually within days, I was sloshing double cream into vast mixers and just doing it by eye. And the same with mayonnaise, vats of mayonnaise, things like that. So yeah, I would say at the Cordon Bleu, I obviously learned the techniques. I learned the correct way of cooking, which has been useful to me every day of my life. It's there, it's in me, it's there. But if then from then on I really learnt at Leith's the huge catering quantities. It's a completely different way of cooking. So from there I taught at Leith School for a while. I had my own catering company in London after that, and I used to do quite a lot of recipe testing for publishers. I'm not sure if they do that anymore, but a publisher would give me a manuscript, and it would be, somebody else's obviously manuscript, and say, can you test these recipes? You've got a month or 2 months or whatever in which to do it. And, if they didn't work, then I had to make sure they worked, alter them, make them work, and send the manuscript back. So I did a bit of that, which I loved doing. And I also I was a stylist. It was called, I think it was called a home economist then. Was it? It was called something like that. Yeah, I think it was called a home economist. But so I worked as a stylist, a food stylist. So I would cook the food for other people's cookbooks, the recipes, for the food for the cookbooks, which I really enjoyed doing. And I did a bit for television as well, so that was quite interesting. So that took me up till I then got married and had 3 children. So I'd always sort of kept my hand in with cooking, and I'd always scribble down recipes. I can't not. I'm obsessed with writing recipes. I just love to write a recipe. So I had, I'd always sort of done that, and I did a tiny bit of catering up north, where I moved from London and I moved to Northumberland when I got married. So I did a little bit of catering up there. But it wasn't really conducive to family life because of, the hours, the distance. We live in the middle of nowhere. So I then, after my children got a bit older, I started doing cookery demonstrations. And I started doing them from home. And then I expanded to doing them all around the country, which I did until COVID came along. And so that put paid to that. So I then started doing them on Zoom, and which suited some people and not others. I think people that had been to the demonstrations before, the live demonstrations, they missed tasting the food. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them definitely did. And I think some of them missed. It was a bit of an outing, they would come on a friend's birthday, or some friends would get together and, say, shall we all go together to do a demonstration? So I think they missed that bit on Zoom. But then on the other hand, there were people who had been to demonstrations and didn't mind, and people who hadn't never been to one and therefore didn't know any different. And actually, I think we're doing quite a lot of other things on Zoom anyway because of COVID. So they were good. And so that's where I am now. I'm about to start doing live demonstrations again.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I think it's nice though, because, although we can do in-person things now, it's opened up the audience and the world a lot more, it's more accessible. So I'm sure more people have been able to come.
Well, we had them from all around the world in Zoom. I couldn't believe it. I literally had no idea. The first one we did, people just I don't know, we sold the places through Eventbrite, and so you have no idea. It's just an email address you get. So we had literally, one time we had people from 7 different countries. So. And we were doing the morning and evening, so we had quite a few from Australia as well. So I was blown away by that. But as you say, yes, it opened it up to far more people, really.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
kind of otherwise enjoy that.
Yeah, right, yeah.
There are some good things that came.
Yes, no, definitely. Well, yeah, yes,
way.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
So, what has driven you towards being an instructor and a recipe writer, rather than working as a chef in a restaurant or maybe a more traditional or expected career route that we would think of now if someone was going through?
Yes. Well, I think that I've never really wanted to. Well, first of all, I'm very much a home cook, I would say, and I'm not a chef, and I don't want to be a chef. I'd never aspired to be a chef, and so just remind me. Sorry, what was your question? Why did I go down the instruction route? Yeah, so I don't know. I sort of fell into it really, because having been to Leith's, worked at Leith's Good Food, they then asked me if I'd like to go and teach at the school, and I did, and actually I really enjoyed that, and I love teaching people how to cook. I really do. I just want everybody to be able to cook and enjoy it as well. That's the main thing. So it wasn't a plan. There wasn't a game plan. But I'd never particularly wanted to work in a restaurant or a cafe or anything like that. So yes, I sort of fell into it really and found I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I suppose when you're a chef behind the pass and you're working in a restaurant, you don't get as much interaction and you can't kind of experience the people who are sharing your craft.
Yes, exactly that. Yes, yeah.
As much as if you're teaching people and passing it on and or demonstrating and kind of
Exactly that. Yeah,
taste your
yeah. Well, exactly that. And I hadn't thought of it like that before, but so demonstrating it's hilarious most of the time. I like to have quite small groups, so I try and keep it to sort of 20 people. Sometimes we squeeze in a few more, but I find that it's more personal, it's more intimate. People join in more. They don't feel embarrassed to ask a question. When I do bigger demonstrations for 100+ people, which would be a charity demonstration usually, nobody speaks. And then there's a queue at the end to ask questions quietly. So we have, I learn, we all learn from each other in a small demonstration. And, as I say, sometimes they're just hilarious. Sometimes I can't get a word in edgeways, which is absolutely fine by me. But I learn, what people's fears are, what they enjoy, what they want, what they like to cook, the sort of recipes they want. And so, yeah, I get to hear, and so that interaction is great. And also, they taste everything that I cook is eaten at the end of the day. Everybody tastes everything, and it's always thrilling when somebody said, for example, somebody quite young said to me the other day, she loathes beetroot, and then so she tasted a little beetroot thing we'd done, and she couldn't believe how delicious it was. And it was because she said the reason she says she doesn't eat beetroot and never ate beetroot was because at school it was so revolting, it put her off. And I think that's true of lots of things. So I really like that people get to taste everything and hear what they say. And it's brilliant if I've converted them to something they think they don't like. And I think they're more likely to cook something if they've tasted it as well, and got an opinion as to whether they like it or not, or their family will.
Yeah, the amount of things that I have tried that I might have been a bit squeamish about prior to going to a demonstration, and someone offers you a taste, and you think, well, why not? Right? I think that you're much more likely to do that in that setting than order it in a restaurant. You're not going to think.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
So you're not sure.
Yeah.
Demonstrations are wonderful for broadening your kind of flavour.
Well, they are exactly that, and I like to sort of bring in new flavours as well if I can. So I try and keep up to date. I'm not sure if I succeed, but anyway, because I'm a bit of a food bore, or possibly quite a lot of a food bore. I like to, keep up with what's going on and try new flavours myself. So I really like to introduce those into the demonstrations. I don't want to frighten the horses or anything, and I don't want to bring in an ingredient sort of gratuitously, just because it's a new ingredient. But as long as the ingredient is available easily from a supermarket, perhaps a special visit to a deli or something, which I think if you're going to cook something nice is worth it. But I will definitely include it. And people usually say, oh, they don't have that in my supermarket, or they don't have that in my deli. And I say, well, I think if you just have a look, you'll find it is there. But it's because they haven't been looking for it, because they sort of didn't know about it. And why would they? So I love that. I love trying to bring in some new ingredients, keep everything sort of relevant. And I think it's nice for, the attendees to be able to give their family and friends something a little bit different.
Yeah, it's brilliant introducing
Yeah.
your loved ones to something.
Yeah,
you've
exactly.
discovered.
Exactly that. Yeah. Yeah. Quite.
So to maybe make it more easy for the audience to determine whether they are a cook or a chef, what would you say is the major difference for you?
Well, I would say that chefs are not always, but usually trained. And home cooks most likely aren't. Chefs usually, I would think, cook for a living. That it's their living, whereas a home cook are cooking usually, but not in every case, obviously, but for their friends and families. And I think it's a different sort of food, completely. Chef's food is very different, and it's easy. Well, it's not. It's very difficult, I think, to cook chef's food at home. I don't want to eat chefy food at home. I mean, I love it. I go to a restaurant, which is a treat. But at home, you can't. Well, first of all, a chef usually has helpers, and other chef helpers, or people in the kitchen porter, or whatever. There's a lot. They have backup. The home cook could most likely be on their own, and you can't. I just don't think you can produce that sort of food. And be a guest at your own table as well. Whereas the chefs aren't sitting down to eat the food that they've cooked. They're on to the next course. So for those reasons, I think it's well, that's how I think the difference is between a chef and a home cook. Yeah.
Both, valuable and important
Yeah.
areas of cooking, but very different. And one's like a pair of high heels and one's a pair of Snickers.
Yeah. Yes.
They
Yes.
suit
Yes.
occasions.
Yeah. That's yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. It is. They're different things, and I think, it's hard work being a chef, isn't it? It's long hours, and you've got to know that you want to do it.
It's been very kind of dedicated profession.
Yeah.
Needs passion and commitment for sure. And as a home cook myself, I would be far too lazy.
Yeah.
So, just thinking about how you both studied and taught and culinary schools, and you mentioned when we were talking earlier off mic that your son also went to Leith.
Yes, I did.
I just wondered if there was any kind of major differences that you've noticed in how things were done, back when you were at school, at culinary school, and to today.
Well, yes, I noticed a huge difference. A huge difference. I think in my day, they were more geared to just learning how to cook, just because it's nice to learn how to cook. Not for everybody, but I think most of the people at the Cordon Bleu when I was there weren't there to make it their career. Well, a lot of them, I think, weren't anyway. I most definitely was. And when I taught at Leith, I would say the same. There were no males on my Cordon Bleu course. And when I taught at Leith, there were very few. And now it's completely different. I mean, I'm speaking loosely, but I think there'll be as many males as females. Certainly at Leith's. I don't know, is that the case here, would you say? Yeah.
It's quite down the middle, really.
Yeah, I would say it was like that. And also, I think the courses, the techniques and the different on the different courses are much improved. Teaching things like sort of plant-based cooking, we had none of that. Cooking for dietary requirements, nutrition. I don't think we had any. Well, we didn't have any of that. So I think they have changed a lot. I remember at Leith, they got a butcher would come in and with a carcass and cut it up, and so that we didn't have that, and I think that's things like that, I think. And also there's practical part of your course is practical now sometimes, I think, and you probably do that here. Do you go out and so you have a stint in a restaurant if that's what you'd like to do, or perhaps go and working for a food magazine behind the scenes, seeing them on a photo shoot, cook some food for the shoot, see them writing recipes, just experiencing sort of all different things, probably going to a supermarket and working alongside a buyer for a week or so to see how it works, which is invaluable. And I think we certainly didn't have any of that in our day. So I think, all those things help to place you with a job afterwards. In fact, I think you have an agency here, don't you? Do you have an agency where
So
people
we have our internship pathway, which is it's obviously a way for students to get placements, but also it's a course that supports them through CV writing and skills and that sort of thing. So and naturally, of course, it's a whole network of connections with the industry, alumni and this sort of thing. So and we also students go on field trips and seen
it's all of it. Yes, exactly. So the difference is huge. And I think that difference is born from the students that come to the cookery schools. They are very much there because they want to make it a career. And I think certainly when my son was there, there were quite a few people on his course who had had jobs in the city or jobs, different sorts of jobs, usually financial ones, I think. And they decided they want to change your career. So it's completely different.
That's very, very common here as well. Now career changers, they've done their kind of, their main job there. Something to do with numbers normally.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it?
And the cooking is a passion.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, and if it's a passion like that, well, you've got to go and tickle that itch, haven't you, and chase it, and and we'll probably be very successful at it for that reason.
If it's something that you really, really are passionate about, there's no reason not to succeed. Right kind of tools.
No, quite, really, quite.
So a lot of students here and elsewhere, I'm sure, would be interested in going into a similar field, writing their own recipes and possibly even cookbooks. Do you have any kind of key advice for anyone who wants to get started in that area?
Well, writing recipes, I would say just make a note of everything you do. and don't do what I used to do, which was on the back of an envelope or a post-it note or a scrap here and a scrap there and a scribble. I've now got very grown up, but it wasn't till my third book, I think, I got grown up, and I've got a book, like a huge exercise book, and I write everything in that now. And because I was always losing my bits of paper, and it was hopeless, absolutely hopeless. So, you know, if you're writing a recipe, or you're trying to write one, or B, if you're just cooking something for fun and you think, you know, it might be a winner and you're onto something, just write every little detail down, because you think you'll remember, and you won't. You definitely won't.
I testify to that for sure.
Oh, can you? Yes. Well, so literally everything. And then what I do now is then I'm thinking about it, and I might be just outside doing something, pottering around, anything, and I think, oh, but it would be nice with that, or you could substitute this for that, and so I can go back to that page of that recipe and just write the note, which I do all the time. And what did you say? A book? Well, a book, I think it's quite hard to find a publisher. Because there's a lot of cookbooks out there, and I've worked on a lot of, I forgot to say earlier, but I've worked on a lot of other people's cookbooks, and in one way or another, but I'd always rather wanted to do my own. And it's just very hard to get a book deal. And it's what you need. I learned with what you need is a platform. So perhaps if you like baking or something like that, which I don't particularly, but or you have an angle, that is helpful. So if I would say if there's something that you really enjoy cooking, go for that, concentrate on that. If you're wanting to write a book about that subject, just go all out on that subject. Then people said to me, well, you need an agent, and I was lucky in that an agent came to one of my cookery demonstrations, and she thankfully liked what she saw, and I think a few people had said to her, about my recipes and things, and so she very kindly eventually took me on, and then that's how I got my first book deal. She invited an editor or some editors to come to a demonstration, because she thought if I can get them to the demonstration, hopefully they will get the point. But I'm what they call a general cook in cookbook terms. And so, I'm not the baker or the slow cooker or the whatever it is. So I didn't, I needed to have a platform. And I think that's what I would say to people, because that's what my agent always said to me, you have to have a platform for a publisher to be interested in you. Anyway, so an editor came to a demonstration, which is lovely, because actually editors don't have time to traipse around London or wherever it is going to a demonstration. And by some miracle, I got my first book deal. And the book was called Make It Easy, and I simply couldn't believe my luck. And then 2 months ago, my fifth book was published. So that was fantastic. But I think also other ways, I think if students are wanting to write a book or get their recipes out there in some form or another, that now, which wasn't around it was around when I had my first book deal, but perhaps Instagram wasn't in 2012 when my first book was published. But I think people now build profiles on social media, or they do pop-ups, a pop-up restaurant, pop-up van, pop-up anywhere. And that's how you get a following and how you get experience, and you see what people like, and you get a platform. So, perhaps that's another way of doing it.
Absolutely, I think, and it's a relatively non-committal way of getting your food in front of people and finding out if they like it, what they like, what they don't.
Yeah. So you don't have to have a bricks and mortar, the expense of a bricks and mortar sort of building. I think that's how quite a lot of restaurants have started recently, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, even some of our other alumni have started out with something temporary or something as part of a street food market, this sort of thing.
Yeah, I am.
And then they can fine tune their offering.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Fully commit, which is brilliant. There's many options.
So I think, so there are more options probably these days. And also, editors and publishers, they can see what you're doing on social media, as long as you can get in front of them. So I think that's probably how you go about it. But I would also say that, I think if you want to do a book, you sort of need to know what it is, how you want the book to be, and what it's about. In my case, it was a general cookbook, but it's probably good to have a bank of recipes behind you as well, because I think there's a pressure that if you do get a book deal, and there's always a deadline, and of course once you're signed up, the publisher wants the book as soon as it's sort of really viable, and I think then you're scrabbling around trying to make up recipes, which probably aren't going to be your best recipes. So, get a good bank of the sort of things you want to cook and what you want to concentrate on behind you of recipes. And then take it to, then hopefully you get an agent and then take it to the publisher, write a synopsis. And also, I think, be prepared to go off your course a little bit if that's what the editors, the publishers say. An editor might say, well, we like your idea, your book proposal, but actually we think, would you be able to do it from this angle, or would you be able to do something slightly different, which happened with one of my books. And that was great, and it turned out it was called Just One Pan, and it wasn't the exact idea that I'd had in the beginning. And that we took to the publishers, but it was great, and we listened to their ideas, and we amalgamated everything together, and we I think we made a great book, but it was not the book that I'd written in my proposal.
Yeah, and I think that's I suppose you just have to try and curb your ego a little bit when anyone who's kind of needs to have feedback.
Well, I'm thrilled with the feedback, because obviously the publishers and your editor, they know what sells, what people like. They know, they have endless sort of sales meetings and cover meetings and meetings I didn't know existed, and it's all for the good of the book. But they know, they do this every day, and they know, and I don't think I'll ever understand publishing, but I understand more than when I started out. But it is, I'm always, any advice is greatly received from me. Yeah.
Best way to approach something, really.
Yeah, exactly. Bow to the people that know.
So where do you find your inspiration to your recipes?
Well, I find it sort of everywhere, really. I find it in my fridge. There's nothing I like more than going into the fridge and thinking, what can I make with this? I need to make something. What am I going to make with this? So that's the basis of a lot of my recipes. I love gardening, and I have a veg garden. So the veg garden, I get from the garden, and that is on from that is seasonal. I love making. So I'm very, very guided by the seasons. I only want to eat things really that are in season. It's a bit like flowers, I don't want delphiniums in December, even if I can buy them, or roses or something. So I very much stick to the seasons, and so therefore that's the start of a lot of recipes. Then I get inspiration from Instagram, from restaurants, and my stomach. And I just, I sometimes, any ingredient, pretty much any ingredient, I just look at it and I think, what am I going to make with this? I rarely want to make the same old thing again. And well, obviously I do make the same old thing quite often, but I'm always just thinking, what can I do with this? And that I love writing recipes, and I think that's the greedy side of me coming out. I just want to, write a recipe. So I think, my inspiration comes from just everywhere, just food in general, or just flavors or something I read. I'm always thinking, what could I do with that? And so.
Well, I think that helps to make your recipes very accessible, and they are very realistic people to cook at home. Do you think it's quite an important part of how you write your recipes in making them accessible and for practically anyone to be able to?
Absolutely, 100%. People are kind enough to say they work. My recipes work, and I'm flattered. I just love to hear that, because I really, really hope that they do. I have when I and I test and test and test and retest and retest. And my poor husband John, gosh, he must get fed up with some of it. And then sometimes I just think, this isn't going to work. I can't get this to work, so I scrap it. But everything is tested to within an inch of its life, and there's no way I'm going to stand up in front of a room full of people and demonstrate something that's not going to work. So they absolutely work, and I am really obsessed with them working. I just never would put a recipe out there unless I was 100% sure that it does. And for the books, we have a wonderful, the publishers send my manuscript to a recipe editor, which is different to the little book editor.
Yeah.
And she is called Anne, and she is fantastic. And she picks me up on the smallest, slightest little thing, just everything, And it's so good that she does, because she makes the recipes 10 times better. And because I might assume that somebody knows something or knows how to do something, and she lets nothing get past, absolutely nothing. And she's brilliant. She's absolutely brilliant.
That's like a treasure.
Yeah, she really is. She's fantastic. And so I 100% know that they're right. They're not necessarily completely right when I send them to her. The recipes will work when I send them to her, but I might have just missed a point, or I might not have explained something as clearly as I could have done, particularly for a beginner. Yeah.
Everyone needs this another set of eyes on their because you can spend so long looking at something.
It
needs some fresh perspective about it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would say that cookery books are very precious items, and quite often you'll have a mum's cookery book or a grandmother's cookery book, and they're relied on and revisited year after year. And however, there's a lot of very quick fire, short form recipe content online on social media, which is great for inspiration. I think it's a good thing, but in your opinion, has there been a bit of a shift away from recipe books, cookery books, or are they just timeless enough to have people always wanting them?
I think the latter. I think they are sort of timeless, and there is still a huge appetite for them. Obviously, I'm not a publisher, or so I can't answer that question from their point of view. But I think people love cookery books. And again, because I get to speak to people at demonstrations, people say I take cookbooks to bed with me. I read them like books. I don't need another cookery book, but I'm going to get one. And, I think it's a thing. It is a thing to be treasured. And you might not cook all the recipes out of every book, but you probably have a lot of books, certain books you go to certain things for. It's like you might have a lot of pairs of shoes, but they don't all, you don't wear them all the same pair every day, do you? So you dip in here and you dip in there. But I think somebody did say the other day about the screen on the screen, because there's so much content available online now, isn't there? But the trouble with cooking from a screen is you have to keep tapping it because it goes off, which would be infuriating. So yeah, I think great for inspiration and things, but I think books, yeah, I think and hope they're here to stay.
I think so. They're just such a a joyful thing, and even fiction, non-fiction. It's good to have something tangible, and
Yeah,
it's the smell of a book.
yes, it is. It's it is. Yeah, lovely.
Humans aren't quite
No,
digital entirely yet.
no,
We're gonna always want.
no. Yeah.
So, is your audience? I mean, I know you take a lot of feedback, and if you listen to your audience a lot, are they interested in trends? Say from social media.
I think they are interested in trends, and not so much just from social media, probably from shops or cafes, restaurants, probably programs on television as well, cooking programs. I think they are. I don't think they're looking to be driven by a trend, but I think they quite like to know what's what and probably how to go about doing some of these things. So I always like to introduce a few little new ingredients or trends or something to my demonstrations if I can. Not as I said before, not gratuitously, but just because I think it's nice to be able to cook for your friends and family something that's a little bit different, and you feel quite proud. And a lot of people, they just wouldn't know these things existed, though. Even people that haven't seen them. We were talking about people that might have seen them, but they probably have no idea. And why would they? They're going about their lives in their way. So it's up to me as a cook to know about these things and try and pass it on.
The kind of person with the know-how, and saying you've seen this, and this is what you do.
Yes, yeah. But I always make sure that the ingredients are readily available. I wouldn't do anything that and actually, that you can use an ingredient that you can use for more than one thing. So I like to try and tell people that, you can use this dukkha for this recipe, but you can also use it for X, Y, and Z as well. So then it's not just sort of sitting in the cupboard unused for one recipe.
Yeah, which definitely happens a lot.
Yeah, which I think it does. Yeah, yes. Do you ever get to the bottom of a jar of preserved lemons? No. I know. Well, it's lucky that they last forever, isn't it?
Indeed.
Yes. Yeah.
So naturally, everyone will be thinking, speaking of trends, everyone will be thinking about Christmas. When this goes out, it's December.
Yeah.
So we're recording, and people are going to be looking for recipes. And luckily and thankfully, your latest book is all about Christmas.
It is.
And we will shamelessly plug it for you. So can you provide us with a summary of what people...
I'd be delighted to. So it's called the Get Ahead Christmas Cook. And as it says, as it implies, I'm sort of saying that you can start preparing for Christmas from October onwards. Wow, exactly. So that boat's sailed now, isn't it? Because we're at the beginning of December, but for next year, yes. And but still, there's still time to do a lot of things. And another thing I learned through the demonstrations is that people just don't have any idea of just what can be done in advance. And I understand that, because why would they? Because most recipes say da 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 in the method, and then they say and serve at the bottom. And I think the general thing is that you have to be getting 5 or 6 recipes ready, all to serve at once, which is impossible, really, and unbelievably stressful. So there's a lot that can be done in advance, and so that's what the book is, and it's more than just a Christmas book. So yes, there is a section about cooking and buying and shopping and the timetables and the run up to Christmas, timetables and countdowns and things like that. The monthly countdown and then a daily one near Christmas, and Christmas recipes. Recipes for the big day. There's also alternative recipes for a vegan showpiece and a vegetarian showpiece. There's a little recipe for people that might just be 2 or 3 or 4 people for Christmas. They don't want a great big turkey. And then there's no Christmas pudding or anything like that in there, but there are 5 what I've called show-stopping, what I've modestly called show-stopping, to steal a phrase from a word from Bake Off, puddings, which can all be done in advance. So, and then after that, so that's the sort of Christmas section, and then it's a sort of general entertaining book. And actually, a lot of people have said to me, it's so much more than a Christmas book, and they've been cooking from it already. So there's menus at the back for some New Year's Eve and Christmas Eve and other sort of times. There's Boxing Day feasts and party food and canapes and leftovers. Love a leftover. So lots of brunches, lots of things in there. In fact, one of my favourite leftovers, can I tell you, is in there are leftover bread sauce, ham and cheese croquettes. I love bread sauce. So it's really just like a normal croquette, but instead of a thick white sauce, a panada, as I learned at the Cordon Bleu, a thick white sauce is called. It's made with bread sauce, so you just mix it's just your Christmassy bread sauce, cheese and ham together.
Good idea.
Well, might you make those, Freya, do you think?
Well, I might. It's only me and my other half this Christmas, but we're both greedy, so
Yeah.
I mean, you'll be buying plenty of cheese and charcuterie.
Yeah, yes. Oh, love that. That just reminds me, when you're saying that, this is a bit of a tip from the book, but when you're saying you're buying all those things, I think we all tend to over shop a bit at Christmas because it's special, isn't it? And we think, oh God, and the shops are shut. So actually, first of all, I'd just say that a lot of the recipes in the book, certainly the salads and things for between Christmas and New Year for the feasts, they sort of are mainly store cupboard, so that you don't have to go shopping between Christmas and New Year. And so but also things like butternut squash, so the vegetables that last a long time. And they don't even need to be in the fridge, just a garage or somewhere cool. But what I was going to say was that if you've slightly over-shopped on green veg, just cook it. Well, any veg, really. Just cook it. So don't just watch the tender stem broccoli going brown or yellow, it goes, doesn't it, in the fridge. And then and you're not going to use it for days and then chuck it. So if you're not going to use it, just cook it. And its shelf life will go up to about a week, whereas otherwise, you will have to chuck it. So it preserves veg much longer if it's cooked. So don't just watch it.
Really good. Actually, I'm definitely guilty of having things that want a bit bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're just sitting there raw.
Yeah. I know. Well, it is, and that is, but raw. Yeah, they're much better cooked. And they literally last covered in the fridge a week or more, so it's silly not to.
Gonna take that tip home with me, definitely. Well, we've got a sneak peek of the book in our Christmas with Le Cordon Bleu magazine, but naturally people should just go and buy the book as well. And finally, I would just like to ask you, have you got anything exciting coming up in 2025?
Well, yes, I've got exciting in that I'm starting my in-person or live, in-person they're called, aren't they, demonstrations again, which I'm really excited about. I'm not going to be going around the country as much as I did before, so I'm just going to be doing them from Divertimenti in London, in Knightsbridge, and from my home in Northumberland. So that's my excitement. And then I'm looking forward to doing some gardening, which I love gardening. And I haven't had time the last few. I've had 3 books published quite quickly. So I haven't had time. And I'm just, looking forward to writing more recipes again. Again, I haven't been writing recipes for ages because I've been concentrating on the books. So I'm looking forward to doing that. And I think I'm going to start a Substack, which is quite a commitment, I think, but that's another outlet for my recipes. So I'll be writing recipes for that. And actually also for the demonstrations, because every demonstration I do are brand new recipes. Because I think if people have been kind enough to buy a book, I don't, they don't want to come to a demonstration and see a recipe they've already got. So they're always new recipes. So that keeps me on my toes. I'm always writing a recipe of some sort. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, it has been such a glorious pleasure to have you and talk to you and pick your brains on what. We will make sure we include links to where we compare books and where we follow you. And all there is to say is thank you very much. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we will look forward to seeing you again soon, hopefully.
Yes, well, thank you, Freya. I've really enjoyed it. It was lovely to chat all things food.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Beyond Food and Wine, a Le Cordon Bleu podcast. Keep up to date with all our news and episodes by following us on social media or by signing up to our newsletter. Links are included in the episode notes. Until next time, à bientôt!